In this video, you'll learn how to store inputs from text fields into control variables and how to detect their changes. You'll also discover how to detect when a text field begins or ends editing. Text fields make it possible for users to type text into your app. For example, like customers typing their name in when signing up for the Little Lemon newsletter. As you learned previously in this course, you can add a text field to a project by using code as displayed on screen. In this code, a variable called input value is created and declared using a property wrapper called state. This variable is connected to the text field by preceding it with a $sign. The $sign tells Swift UI that this is a controlling variable, meaning that any change to the text field will automatically be stored in input value. If you have a text field that asks you to type your name and this text field is tied to a variable called customer name, any name you type there will be stored in customer name. This code is in its most basic form. But what happens if you want to detect changes to the text field as they happen? For example, to prevent letters from being typed into a text field meant only for numbers. In that case, you can add a modifier called onChange to the text field. The syntax for this is displayed on screen. OnChange is a modifier that can be used in other situations, not just with text fields. In fact, it has nothing to do with text fields at all. OnChange is a modifier that observes controlling variables like state type and performs a closure when they change. In this case, I've configured it to observe input value and report any changes. In order to examine how the code works in action, let's run the simulator as Xcode Preview cannot do that. If you are not sure how to run the simulator, you can consult the additional resources for this lesson. And there you go. Now every time you type something into the text field, the value is stored in input value. As input value changes, the onChange line detects the change and runs its closure, printing input value to Xcode's console. New value represents the new value that input value holds every time a change happens. For example, if you type the name John, onChange will be triggered every time you type each letter of the name. You may also want to know how to detect when the user has finished editing the text field. This can be signified by the user pressing return. To detect that, you can add another modifier, this time called onSubmit, to the text field. Let's run it on the simulator again. If you type your name and then press return, submitted is printed in the console. Note that there is another variation of the text field command that triggers the moment editing starts and ends. This variation uses the closure onEditingChange, which receives a Boolean value that will be true when editing begins and false when return is pressed and editing ends. Let's run it on the simulator again. The value equal to true is printed in the console where you start typing a name inside the text field, and a value of false is subsequently printed on the console when the return key is pressed, because the value from the text field has now been submitted. In this video, you learned how to store values from text fields into control variables and detect their changes, as well as how to detect when the editing of a text field begins or ends.